Spanish 2, Test 9. There are 57 questions. Part 1 is going to be conjugating verbs in the future tense. So part 1 is 1 through 16. And this is the same type of conjugation as any other test. I've given you a subject pronoun and a verb, and you have to conjugate the verb based on the pronoun. Remember that the thing about future tense is that you stick with the infinitive, so you leave the infinitive, and then you add the endings onto the infinitive. And then you need to remember that there are 10 irregulars. Those can be found on page 234 or in your notes. So that's what this will be. If I had something like so this is an irregular. It becomes sald, like that. And so if you had 2, the future tense endings are as, hemos, and on. And so you would add the 2 ending onto this basically new infinitive. So the answer would be saldrás. Okay? If you had something like el and mirar, mirar is regular. So you would leave the infinitive and then add the ending on according to the infinitive. So since it's el, it would be this ending, and it would be mirará. Mirará. Okay, just like that. Then section 2 is going to be 17 through 32. And this is the conditional tense. And just like for the future tense with the conditional, you leave the infinitive and then you add the endings onto the end of the infinitive. But it also has irregulars. It's the same 10 irregulars that the future tense has. And so those you basically change the infinitive and then add the endings onto those irregulars. So the conditional endings are ia, ias, ia, íamos, and ian. Okay? They all have accents over the I's. This probably just needs to get thrown away. And then, so if I had something like en decir, and let's say ustedes and venir or vivir. Okay? It doesn't matter if the infinitives are AR, ER, IR for future or conditional tense. The endings are the same for all 3 of the categories. All that matters is what kind of infinitive. Does it stay as its original infinitive, or does the infinitive change as one of those 10 irregulars? So decir is one of the 10 irregulars. It becomes dir, and so the ea ending would be ia, so it would be diría. Okay, and then vivir is regular. Ustedes, the ending is ian, so you'd say vivirían. Okay, just like that. So super easy, the first 32 questions. Like I said, the hardest thing is going to probably be remembering which ones are irregulars. So if I were you on the test, there's little pockets of space. As soon as you open the test, I would just go ahead and write down the irregulars, just so that you don't have to be looking at every single verb as you're going and saying, oh, is this an irregular? Oh, is this an irregular? Just go ahead and write down the 10, and then you'll recognize them when you see them on the test. Section 3 is the next 10 questions, 33 to 42. 33 to 42. This is por versus para. Okay. And the directions say choose whether you should use por or para. So I have given you a sentence in English, and I meant to underline every one, but some of them did not get underlined. It's not going to make that big of a difference. You'll know which word you're trying to identify. But it'll be something like is for science. Okay. The homework is for science. So the word that we're trying to pick out is obviously for. And we need to decide if it's por or para. If I were to translate this, which one would I use? And the answer is para. Okay. And all of the, let's see, all of the qualifications for para, like when you use para, the directions or the instructions are on page 250. And then por is on page 236. So I would recommend that you read over those. Obviously look at your notes, but then also read over them just to be able to tell so that you know what you're looking for. So just as a review, you use por when you're talking about exchange for something, which doesn't have to be money. It could be like barter system. So like when you're a kid, you trade this piece of candy for that piece of candy. Okay. So in exchange for manner or means, that means like I called you on the phone. I called you by phone. We got to school by bus. Okay, by means of. Duration is obviously an extended how long you did something. Cause or motive. This is like, well, in your book it says for, because of, on behalf of, for the sake of. So that's like if your friend is sick and calls you and says, hey, can you work for me? You're working for them. You're not employed by them. You're working in place of them. Yeah, there's a lot of examples on page 236 you can look at. Movement is another one for por. That means like just how we said like I go to school by bus. You could say something like I go to school by 8:20, or I go to school by Interstate 35. So a movement or like going down a certain street is you go down by that way. And then like per, the word per is represented by por. So like percent or miles per hour or kilometers per mile would be por. For para, it's on page 250. And this is a little bit more, I feel like para is more, like it's not as wide of a range of uses. It can basically, para, the uses for para can be boiled down to purpose or destination. So like if you do something for a purpose or it's ending up at a certain destination, you would use para. So this, and I'm going to just read from your book, 250. The purpose or destination indicated by the use of the preposition para may be a person, if something is for someone, an object or a thing, like the table is for the kitchen, a place, like I'm going to the store, I'm leaving for the store. You would say use para. A point in time is like a deadline, so it's kind of like a destination or purpose. So it's like for Tuesday. My homework is for Tuesday, or it's for Wednesday. And then an action is like I read in order to learn. So in order to, or in this case, is represented by para. So if you have blank and then infinitive, or you have like for and then infinitive, that's an action, because infinitives are verbs, so that's an action. And so that has to be para, because it represents like I said, if you I read to learn, or I read in order to learn, or I read for learning, that is para as well. So if it's an action, that's a purpose, and then that would be para as well. Okay. So that's what it's going to look like. It's going to be a sentence in English. Like I said, some of the words I underlined them and some of them I forgot to. So, but you'll be fine. It's not going to matter. Sections 4 and 5 are vocab. This one is 43 to 47. And this is Spanish to English. And this one is 48 to 52. And this is English to Spanish. Okay. Please make sure, once again, if you have el or la, you have to translate that word. Un or una, you have to translate that word. Or if you have an infinitive, you have to write to. Because remember that an infinitive, if the verb ends in AR, ER, or IR, it means two verbs. You have to write that. Okay? And then 53 to 57. So section 6. Oops, 6. 53 to 57 is translations. Okay. And these are going to be sentences over future and conditional. Okay. You need to know the verbs to play, to read, to study, to eat, and to travel. Okay, to travel. So future tense, remember when we're talking about the actual future tense, not the near future. Near future is somehow not that far away. We use ir a plus infinitive. When we're talking about the future tense, which is what is on this exam, okay, the future tense, not the near future, the future tense, you have to use, it's represented by will, okay? That indicates the future tense. So if I said something like, we will run, okay? The verb for to run is correr, and my future tense ending is hemos. Whoops, that's an S. So I would say correremos, and that's it. You could say nosotros, but it is optional, not required, because remember, certain endings indicate like that. Nosotros is the only subject that could go with hemos. Okay, so if you have will, that means the future tense. Do not use the near future. You must use the future tense. Has, a, hemos, an. Okay, I will mark it wrong if you use the near future tense, which is the ir, a infinitive. Conditional. Conditional is indicated by would. Would. If you said something like, I would run. I would run. Remember, run is correr. Correr. So if you have would, that is conditional. Okay? It's like if then. So for our conditional endings, it's ia, ias, ia, iamos, ian. So since I is the only way that you can conjugate it with, let's see, we would say correría. Okay? Still fine. In this case, I'm okay if you leave out the subject pronoun. It would be better to include it just because ia can be the ending for yo, el, ella, and usted. So it's better to include the subject pronoun, but I don't think I would count wrong unless I was in just a really bad mood. I'm just kidding, by the way. So yeah, so that's your test. And then the 3 extra credit problems are from, I can't remember the page number, but it's the passage on Salamanca. It's on page 239. And that's the only passage in that chapter, the culture passage. So, and it's like 4 sentences long. So it's like not even that long. So page 239 for the extra credit, and that's it. So y'all let me know if you have any questions.